Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. Bleach the 1000-Year Blood War arc part 3 is right around the corner, and it promises to be something truly special. We're leaving the endless battles of the Second Invasion behind us, as the stakes are now raised considerably, the war instead finding its way to the royal palace, and the natural conclusion of the arc itself. Yes, there's still another part to go after this one, but don't be mistaken. We're very much entering the endgame here. And so, with that shift in story comes a new set of important characters to pay attention to. This is an exciting time in Bleach for fans both new and old. This is where we're anticipating the biggest amount of changes, the most drastic changes to the source material yet. And even so, among all those changes, reworks and rewrites, I still foresee these being the biggest, most important characters of the bunch. So in today's video we'll be ranking and explaining the roles of the 11 most important characters of the 1000-Year Blood War arc part 3 to come. These are the faces to keep an eye on. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if you see each of these characters adorning one or more of my episode thumbnails in the near future. Of course, let me know in the comments below, which of these characters are you the most excited to see in action, and did I miss anyone off the list? Which story are you the most excited to see unfold? Before we get started, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit subscribe to stay up to date with the channel as part 3 rolls around. It really helps me out. So without further ado, let's begin the list with, as always, an honourable mention. I've been really looking forward to them adapting this part of the story, to be totally honest. The truth is that as we enter part 3, there are a ton of important characters to contend with. Far too many for one measly list. And of course, the anime is making changes all over the place that affect the resonance of certain characters, like Uryu, for example. Uryu didn't really do anything during this part of the original story, so he hasn't made the list, as that's all I really have to go on right now. But let's face it, his role is likely to be expanded massively here in the anime, where I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes one of the standout characters all of a sudden. Anyway, with that out of the way, it's time to talk about our one and only honourable mention, the Soul King. The Soul King is admittedly a bit of a weird one in that he's barely a character, and therefore it is hard to know really just how much he counts. But as a narrative device, there's no denying his importance both to the story and to the world of Bleach. More an icon than anything else, in the original story, the Soul King's death represented a huge shift in the tides. His fate at the hands of Yhwach and then Ichigo signalled a massive seismic change in the narrative. The stakes were all of a sudden very real, as the world began to crumble all around them. Particularly for those of us who had been reading Bleach weekly since back in the days of AIZEN, this truly was the end times. The outcome we had all long been wondering if we would ever actually see. The fall of the Soul King effectively opens the doors to part 3 and the road it goes down, but there's actually more to him than that as well. His influence is far-reaching, and he has an indirect impact on major plot moments that will be happening throughout this part. For example, everything to do with UKITAKE, or Mayuri's big fight with Pernida. Plus, I'm kind of hoping the anime really is going to dive into this character a little more, thus fleshing out both him and his overall importance. Regardless, while currently only an honourable mention, REIO is still one to look out for. Speaking of REIO, moving on to the main list itself, in 11th place we have Sternritter C, the compulsory Pernida Pankajaz, the left arm of the Soul King. While Pernida has already enjoyed an expanded role so far thanks to the anime featuring in the extended battle with the Zero Division and even getting a sneak peek at a potential Volsten dish, the gigantic hand's best is yet to come. Aside from helping its master Yhwach conquer the royal palace, Pernida engages in one of the best battles of the entire Thousand Year Blood War arc as it faces off with Mairi and Nemu in an incredible fight that I'm anticipating will take possibly 2 full episodes to complete. The reveal that Pernida is in fact the left arm of the Soul King is one of the best reveals of the arc too, though the trailer for part 3 did technically already show that. There isn't much substance to Pernida's character, but ultimately it serves its purpose and it serves it well. As the first of the Schutzstaffel to fight, it's going to prove an incredibly memorable moment in the anime. Plus, considering the anime incorporated Pernida into a fascinating new flashback to 1,000 years ago, showing how Yhwach came to be in possession of the left arm itself and why it serves him to this day, I'm hopeful that Pernida will be fleshed out even more, especially if Part 3 does delve deeper into the Soul King's backstory. Next on our list is another member of the Sternritter, the leader of the Schutzstaffel Sternritter X the X-Axis, Leal Barrow. Leal plays a very similar role to Pernida, headlining one of the biggest battles of the arc to come. While Pernida's fight is truly excellent, I'd argue Leal's battle with Kyoraku and Nanao is the one people are more excited for overall, and will likely be Part 3's crowning big finale. I'm very excited to see how the anime handles Leal, particularly where his multiple transformations are concerned. Originally, I was worried that his entire Volston dish would be bright green, but now I'm thinking the main body will still be white, while only the wings will be emerald, but I mean, I could be wrong. I'm still hoping as well that Leal gets some kind of backstory in the anime, even if it's just as part of the Friend saga, which we will talk about in a bit. In general, the Schutzstaffel all need fleshing out. They're great villains, and they work as the final hurdle for our heroes, but their biggest flaw is that they pretty much all lack real depth, and that can be easily remedied. Like I mentioned, the anime has already begun drip-feeding some history for Pernida, so there's no reason why it can't do the same for Leal. Like Pernida before him, Leal's fight is also massive. In fact, it's even longer and more of a spectacle, so there's bound to be some extra time to play around with. Of course, Leal also helps his king conquer the royal palace, and I'm excited to see what the anime has in store for him aside from that. Though, like Pernida, he still needs to break free of Senjumaru's bankai first. Right, let's change gears a bit. At number 9, we have none other than Sosuke Aizen, the traitorous former captain of the 5th Division who will make his long-awaited return to the series in the Thousand Year Blood War Arc Part 3. While this is a huge deal in itself, Aizen doesn't really get too much to do just yet, unless the anime expands his role, which I think they've already hinted at doing, which is very exciting. As I've mentioned in the past though, I'm not really sure what more you can do with Aizen while he's still strapped to Chair-sama. His movement is somewhat limited, therefore whatever role he has is mostly dictated by the whims of others. That doesn't mean Aizen doesn't get anything to do though. After being released from prison, he's enlisted by Kyoraku to help the Gotei 13 overcome the surplus power of the Soul King. See, REIO is still having an impact on the narrative, and even threatens to bring the palace crashing down to the Serete far below. But while Aizen doesn't get much to do in terms of the narrative, the real impact comes from just getting to see him out in the open again. Being able to see Aizen interacting with the rest of the Gotei 13 for the first time in 2 years is an absolute delight, and I can't wait. Maybe the anime will add some more interactions. If we end up doing one of these videos for part 4 as well in the future, well, I wonder if Aizen would rank a little higher on that list. For now though, there are just too many characters who engage with the narrative on a deeper level, but Aizen is always awesome to see. Alright, as we move on through the list, you didn't think all of the most important character slots in Part 3 would just be reserved for Captains and Sternritter, did you? Not so, as in 8th place we have the vice captain of Squad 12, Nemu Kurotsuchi. Nemu has been a quiet constant throughout the story of Bleach so far, only ever really playing second fiddle to Mayuri's manic antics, looking on at his many atrocities with nothing but a robotic stare. And that remains true for the vast majority of the Thousand Year Blood War arc as well. Nemu has already been involved a little bit, helping Mayuri in his battle against Giselle, but even there she mostly took a back seat. Now though, as we arrive at part 3, Nemu will shine brighter than ever before. Fighting alongside Mayuri in his battle with Pernida, Nemu shows more autonomy than both we and Mayuri thought possible, pushing the boundaries of her evolution to the max. Surprisingly, Kubo took this time to really dive deep into the relationship between Captain and Vice Captain, giving us an extensive backstory for Nemu, and one that sets up her future as a character moving forward in Bleach as well. Seeing Nemu actually taking on a member of the Schutzstaffel, and a divine one at that, was both shocking and incredible, and I can't wait to see the anime's take on her power. And in 7th place we have another vice captain, this time the vice captain of the 1st Division, Nanao Issei. Nanao has already taken to the role of being the head captain's aide well, as seen in both parts 1 and 2 of the anime, but that authority shines through here during this moment of total crisis. With the Serete reduced to rubble and what few living Gotei 13 fighters there are congregating at their last remaining stronghold, Nanao takes charge in some surprising but effective ways, going so far as to stand up to the likes of Kenpachi in a pretty inspiring scene. But of course, Nanao's biggest moments come, like Nemu before her, in her showdown with the Schutzstaffel. And in some ways, Nanao's efforts are even more shocking than Nemu's. Despite being key to one of Bleach's most controversial fight endings of all time, I personally can't wait to see it play out on screen. It's possible the anime might attempt to foreshadow Shinken Hakkyoken perhaps earlier on, the ritualistic mirrored Zanpakuto that makes defeating the godlike Leal possible at all. Or maybe it won't. Either way, Nanao is going to step out onto the battlefield for the very first time, and it's safe to say Kubo kind of throws her into the deep end here. Again, following on from the previous battle's example, Nanao is given a substantial backstory here as well, as her relationship with Kyoraku is afforded more depth in what very well may be their final moments. It's safe to say the battle between Kyoraku, Nanao and Leal is very highly anticipated, and here's hoping the anime pulls it off. Shifting gears again, our number 6 spot brings us right back to the Sternritter, and this time it is Sternritter H the Heat Basby. Basby has already enjoyed the spotlight as one of the more exposed Sternritter of the bunch, battling Hitsugaya and then being seen numerous times throughout the second invasion, including attempting to hunt Ichigo down and facing off briefly against Rukia and Renji. However, as of the finale of Part 2, Basby was betrayed by his king, with Yhwach robbing the fiery Sternritter of much of his power in order to resurrect the Schutzstaffel. This acts as a conduit to giving us a completely new look at Basby, someone who is less about following orders and more about fighting for himself. With Basby now leading a small rebellion against Yhwach and his loyal archangels, and even going so far as to briefly work with the Shinigami, there is discord afoot within the Vandenreich. This internal politicking and scheming come to a head with the Friend Saga, which is perhaps what I'm personally most excited to see out of Part 3, though that is tricky to say for sure. All of it is going to be great. Maybe I'm most excited for AIZEN's return, actually. Who knows, but either way, this is a big moment. With Basby challenging his former friend Hashwolf to a fight to the death, we get a tantalising glimpse into their life before the Sternritter from 1,000 years ago, and it finally brought some much needed depth to these characters. Getting to see the world as it once was, as Yhwach was busy consolidating his power, was always fantastic. The only downside was that I simply wanted more, and I'm hopeful the anime is going to deliver on that. Basby's desire for revenge acted as a gateway into the past, though he's only part of a larger duo. And so the truth is, you can't talk about one half of the duo without the other. In 5th place, we have the Sternritter Grandmaster, Sternritter B the Balance, Ugram Hashwolf. Despite being the second in command, Hashwolf has had relatively little to do so far. The blonde-haired Quincy has mostly stood quietly by, either on the sidelines or at Yhwach's right hand, while occasionally doling out judgment to the Sternritter deemed failures. The anime expanded Hashwolf's role a little bit, including him in the battle with the Zero Division, though his performance was admittedly less than impressive, as Tenjiro dominated the Grandmaster in combat, perhaps the biggest surprise of the entire extended battle sequence. But despite Hashwolf seemingly being killed for a second time as part of Senjumaru's bankai, we all know he'll be back. Like Basby, Hashwolf is key to the Friend Saga's success. Watching their almost brotherly relationship unfold is excellent, and incredibly well written to boot. It's an emotional sequence, so good in fact, that Kubo has often cited it as one of his favourite moments of the final arc. Unlike Basby, who stays true to himself throughout, the Friend Saga depicts Hashwolf's fall from grace and his decision to betray his brother, turning instead to his new king. It's a brutally raw sequence, and one whose ramifications reverberate throughout the rest of the arc, affecting Hashwolf's character right up until the very end. In 4th place, we have none other than the captain of the 12th Division, Mayuri Kurotsuchi, who's been a very busy character already in the 1000-Year Blood War arc. It's not an overstatement to say that Mayuri has already held a position as one of the most important characters of the arc, in Part 2 specifically. Having figured out that the Quincy utilised shadows to move around, Mayuri created a refuge for the Shinigami in his light-filled laboratory, one that will continue to act as their last bastion of defence right up until the very end. Plus, Mayuri helped to take down Giselle and her zombie army, even freeing the Shinigami under her control. Well, eventually anyway. Plus, he even helped take out Pepe too, for which we can't thank him enough. But the mad scientist simply isn't finished yet, and in Part 3, well, he's more important than ever. Mayuri's lab continues to be essential to the survival of the Shinigami, and he helps them create a passage to the Royal Palace at the very last minute. Mayuri is also responsible for the technology keeping AIZEN in check, and last but certainly not least, the 12th Division's captain battles Pernida in the first of the Schutzstoffel showdowns. Yes, even though we are fresh off a recent Mayuri fight as of only a few episodes ago in the grand scheme of things, he has got another, considerably more involved battle coming up shortly, and as mentioned earlier, it promises to be excellent. Expect to see Mayuri's newly altered bankai during his conquest of God itself, but more than that, expect to see the pinnacle of his growth as a character, his downfall, and what resides beyond that for him. For a character whose despicable, maniacal traits have often been relished by the community, Mayuri never feels more human than he will in Part 3. But as we reach the top 3, these are the most important, the most vital and crucial of characters that will be featured in Part 3 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. Like I said prior to this list beginning, there were quite a few characters that honestly could have made the ranking. For example, Ichigo almost certainly could have been on here because there isn't really a story of Bleach without him, but ultimately, he still feels like he's not quite as crucial to the actual ongoings of the narrative that are playing out in this moment as the rest of the characters we have on the list. And of course, there's always the chance the anime will surprise us with something brand new. But in third place, we have the captain of the 13th Division, Jushiro Ukitake. It's been teased by the anime team already that Ukitake will have more new scenes, and that's good, as the sickly white-haired captain plays a huge role in the climactic confrontation to come, and more screen time for him is only a good thing. Despite barely being involved in the Thousand Year Blood War arc so far, Ukitake steps up to the plate once the second invasion fighting dies down, helping to heal much of the wounded inside the Shinigami stronghold. However, the death of the Soul King in the heavens above sends horrifying shockwaves through the Soul Society, forcing Ukitake into action. It's here the truth of his character is finally revealed. The reason for his enduring illness, his mysterious connection to REIO, he's back once again, and the ultimate sacrifice that Ukitake is prepared to make, following in the footsteps of his father figure in his desire to give it all for the Soul Society that he loves so dearly. Although Ukitake isn't around for very long, his actions send waves rippling through the narrative. His last-ditch effort to save the Soul King, and by extension the different worlds of Bleach, is a massive, monumental, milestone moment, as Ukitake's body becomes a vessel for the right arm of the Soul King, allowing him to act as a desperate anchor for the universe itself. It's exciting stuff and puts so much about Ukitake into perspective, but at the same time it always felt a little underserved. Remember what I said at the start of this video during the Soul King segment, how the death of the Soul King was the end game that so many of us had really been envisioning for a decade up until that point. Well, Ukitake plays a central role in all of that unfolding. If the anime is really going to give us a little more Ukitake love, then I can't wait to see what that actually entails. Perhaps a more detailed flashback showing him as a child on death's door, only for Mimihagi to arrive? We'll have to wait and see. In second place, however, always managing to one-up Ukitake in one way or another, it seems, we have the captain of the 1st Division and the current Captain Commander, Kyoraku Shunsui. Am I a little biased because Kyoraku is my favourite captain? Maybe, though his influence in this part of the story is wide-reaching. Kyoraku's presence will almost certainly be felt, really from the very start, right the way through to the end of Part 3. From making the decision to free AIZEN, to enlisting his help in protecting the Soul Society despite the aggravations of his fellow Gotei 13 members, Kyoraku really comes into his own as the head captain during this section of the Thousand Year Blood War arc. With the fate of the world on the brink of oblivion, there's never been a more dire hour than this, and it's here where Kyoraku steps up, making the hard, unorthodox decisions that no one else can. But that's not all. Kyoraku acts as the spokesman for the Gotei, discussing and negotiating with the remaining Sternritter as the fate of the world hangs in the balance, and he leads the remnants of the Gotei 13's forces into battle as they invade Varvelt for the final showdown. Finally, Kyoraku headlines the most anticipated fight of this entire part of the anime, and probably one of the most anticipated fights of the entire Thousand Year Blood War arc as a whole, which of course features his long-awaited bankai. So excited are people to see this moment play out on screen that it was used as the catalyst for the main trailer for Part 3. I know I can't wait to see how Kyoraku's battle against Leal translates to the anime, and I just hope they do it justice. As a character, Kyoraku is utterly transformed by the Thousand Year Blood War arc in a way that really no other character is. And it's here that the effects of that transformation are felt the greatest. But when it comes to the most important characters of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, well, I honestly think the same person probably wins out no matter which part you're talking about. And of course, that's the Quincy King himself, Yhwach. Yhwach is constantly pushing the narrative forwards, a role which does often fall to the antagonist. But unlike any villain before him in Bleach, Yhwach is a real driver of the plot. He's a man of action, someone who gets things done, and again you will see that throughout Part 3 in a big way. Yhwach is responsible for just about every little thing that's taking place in the war currently. From successfully conquering the royal palace and killing REIO, becoming the new Soul King himself after absorbing what he could of his father's power, to transforming the palace into his icy fortress of Varvelt, Yhwach gets the job done. Really, no other character has as much of a lasting impact on the story as Yhwach, and that's probably how it should be. Even when he's not necessarily involved in a direct capacity, Yhwach's presence will be felt in Part 3. For example, while the Friend saga revolves around the brotherhood of Basby and Hashwolf and their conflict, their lives and fates are splintered by Yhwach's existence and his intrusion on their lives, and his influence is felt all over that flashback. In the last video on the channel, we looked at some spoilers and impressions coming out of the early screening of episodes 27 and 28, and even there it is clear that Yhwach plays a huge, domineering role even in the first 2 episodes of the core, battling Ichigo and possibly going so far as to detail more about the Soul King. I'm very excited to see what else the anime does with Yhwach and his journey, how much further they can push this character as his motivations and desires become even clearer, and his hunger for revenge and power continues to drive the world of Bleach to the absolute precipice. Alright guys, but that's it for the video. As always, I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know down in the comments, am I right with this? Are these the most important characters that are going to be showing up in the 1000 Year Blood War Arc anime Part 3, or am I off base? Did I miss someone out who absolutely deserved to be here? Like I iterated at the start of the video, there are some characters that might have deserved to have been here purely because of the anime and the route it is going with them. Characters like Uryu, Senjumaru, or Ichibei perhaps, but we really don't know for sure until we've actually seen the episodes. Regardless, I would love your thoughts and your opinions down in the comments below, so please do let me know. And as always, I want to end the video by saying a massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my wonderful supporters over on Patreon, without who I wouldn't be able to keep doing this. If you love what I do here over on YouTube and you also want to help support me a little step further, thank you. By visiting the link in my description, you too can support me over on Patreon. For $1 a month, you'll get your name in the credits of every single video like this, and for the $2 tier or higher, you can get every single video I release absolutely free of baked-in YouTube ads. Alright guys, that's it for the video though. Once again, I really hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.